I've always had a fascination with the social class system, the proletariat, the bourgeoisie, and how a lot of the time people inherit the class they're born into and find it very difficult to escape. Life isn't fair. If there's one certainty in life, it's this. We're all dealt a different hand the moment we enter this world, something we don't have any influence over. It's just the circumstances we're given. Some people are born into an embarrassment of riches, more money than they know what to do with, while some fight and scrap for the next meal. Parasite leans into the extremities of this bitter reality and the nightmarish consequences when someone who is pushed that little bit too far finally snaps. Of course, I will be delving into key plot details of the film, so this is your spoiler warning. And if you fancy subscribing to our side project that we're launching very soon, The Horror Exchange, see the links down below in the description. Bong Joon-ho's critically acclaimed film Parasite is a masterful exploration of the nightmarish consequences of social class disparity. While it received widespread recognition for its exceptional storytelling, cinematography and performances, beneath its surface lies a chilling portrayal of society's dark underbelly. This video will delve into the film's nightmarish aspects, focusing on its themes of deception and the unravelling of societal norms. Parasite follows two intertwining Korean families from two very different socio-economic backgrounds. Firstly, the Kim family, consisting of Mr. Kim, Chung-suk, his wife, Ki-young, his daughter, and Ki-woo, his son, are a typical nuclear family from downtown Korea. They live in a dingy apartment that sits below street level, often attracting drunk passers-by who urinate up against the side of the house, probably not even realising that a family live there. There's bugs all over the dining room table, and they try to leech from the Wi-Fi off nearby commercial buildings, just so they're not completely left behind by the fast-paced, ever-changing world around them. In contrast to this, we have the Park family, who reside in this ultra-modern high-tech house, which Mr. Park, a successful businessman, engineered himself from the ground up. The contrast between the two families' living situation is stark, and it's difficult to imagine that they reside just a few miles from each other. Something that Parasite throws out into the open from the get-go is that the poorer Kim family are not stupid. In fact, they're extremely switched on and very cunning, and can manipulate any situation into something that favours them. This is the first unsettling theme that courses throughout the narrative: deception. The Kim family are opportunists and manipulate their way into the lives of the wealthy Park family by posing as skilled professionals. The nightmare begins when the Kims infiltrate the Park family home under false pretenses. Ki-woo manages to land the gig of teaching English to the eldest daughter of the Park family, Da-hai. In turn, he gets into friendly conversation with Mr. Park's wife, Yeon-kyo. Being extremely trusting and definitely oversharing, she tells Ki-woo that their youngest child, Da-song, is a slightly troubled youngster. He's had an accident when he was much younger, which is still affecting him to this day, but he loves to paint, and she feels like he needs some kind of therapy that links to art. Seeing a golden opportunity here, Ki-woo capitalizes on this. He recommends somebody he knows who is extremely gifted in this niche field, very specialist, but she isn't cheap or easy to lock down for appointments. Of course, this is his sister, Ki-young, who doesn't know the first thing about painting. This trend continues as the Park family's other current employees are fired indirectly at the hands of the Kim family. For example, Ki-young plants some underwear in the Park's personal driver's car, insinuating that he's been up to some unprofessional act whilst on the job, and then recommends her father as a driver. Additionally, they also convince the Parks to fire their housemaid, who has served their household for many decades, and suggest their mother instead as a suitable replacement. Before long, the Kim's claws are well and truly locked into the Park household. As a viewer, I experienced conflicting emotions. We see the struggle of the Kim family, the environment that they come from, having to visit food banks and eat in what looks like a gymnasium with other families in the same rut. But simultaneously, I'm repulsed by their actions, their misdirection. Parasite blurs the lines between right and wrong, leaving us questioning the morality of the characters, and by extension, our own. After all, Parasite literally means an organism that lives in or on another organism or species, its host, and benefits by deriving nutrients at the other's expense. As an audience, do we view the Kim family as criminals, skid marks on the outskirts of society, or are they simply doing what we would do in their situation, finding a way to simply get by and put food in mouths? In the final third of the film, the nightmare takes a steep upwards trajectory as the Park family leave the house to go on a camping trip for the weekend to celebrate Da-sung's birthday. The Kim family then take up temporary residence in their house, start drinking, eating, and pretending to live how the other half lived for a short while. However, the party is cut short when the former housekeeper, Moon Gwang, who was fired, rings on the doorbell and demands that she comes to collect her husband, Gyeong-se, whom she's been hiding in the basement for years because he's in debt to some loan sharks. They open the basement and look at the state of a man. He's borderline insane, and his delusions even state that he's happy living there. He even smashes his head off the light switches to try and communicate with the household in Morse code. In a sense, these two spouses have also been parasites to the Park family household for decades without them even knowing. Something which made me really uncomfortable was later in the film. We find out that the episode that Da-sung had when he was younger, which made him never quite be the same and needing art therapy, well, that's because he came downstairs in the middle of the night to get a drink and he found the guy in the basement staring at him from the stairs. He had this face looking at him. You'd be absolutely traumatized. I think I'd need more than finger paint and stick men for me to get over something like that. Something a bit stronger perhaps, like shock therapy. I think I'd have to hang myself from a pylon to get the full benefit. Back in the basement, Moon Gwang discovers that the Kim family are actually all related as she lifts the lid on their scheme. She begins videoing them, incriminating the Kims, which sends them all into a spiral of panic. And the Kims manage to overpower them with numbers and tie them up in the basement before receiving a call from the Parks that, due to bad weather, they're going to turn round and come home and throw Da-sung a party in the garden instead. In a mad dash, the Kims flee back to their home, leaving only the mother behind to cook the Parks a meal. As a result of the downpour which caused the Parks to turn around, the Kim family home is completely flooded. At this point in the film, I get an eerie sense that something bad was going to happen. Of course, it's standard practice of pathetic fallacy to have bad weather symbolise imminent terror, but it almost felt like in a video game where there's a huge dynamic shift towards the end, where there's something fundamental that changes, like a part of the game is destroyed so that you're forced down a very specific path towards your end goal. Well, this was Parasite's interpretation of that. Their home is completely ruined. There's rainwater mixed with sewage waste bobbing through their hallways. While they were out playing in somebody else's world, their own backyard, completely abandoned, was being dismantled and destroyed. A pendulum of karma had swung in the direction of the Kim family, receiving their comeuppance, but it was about to swing violently in the opposite direction again. Simultaneously, Mrs. Park is planning to splash out on a lavish party for Da-sung, and all the workers of the household are required to be there on the clock. This sees Mr. Kim dressed up as a Native American, ready to put on a performance for the guests. He's forced into the role as the jester, and Mr. Park firmly reminds him that he's there to work and is required to do what he's told. The inner turmoil must be tumultuous for Mr. Kim. It's humiliating. His whole world has crumbled before him, his home is in tatters, and he's now prancing around like a show pony. Always remember, Ghoul Gang, that a wounded animal is the most dangerous. All hell breaks loose. Ki-woo goes down to the basement, gets lassoed by Gyeong-se before being smashed over the head with a boulder. The scene then instantly switches to the garden where a small string ensemble is playing classical music. The contrast is just brilliant here, and it highlights the polar opposites of what's happening above and beneath the surface of the house. Gyeong-se is finally unleashed from the basement after years of confinement and picks up a kitchen knife and begins a lethal chain reaction. He proceeds to stab Ki-young, being the first of the Kim family in his line of sight, and mother's instinct kicks in as Chung-suk stabs the crazy Gyeong-se. Panic is unleashed as Mr. Park screams for Mr. Kim to throw him the keys, which get trapped under a corpse so that Mr. Park can make his exit. Mr. Park goes to pick them up and retches on the smell, which is understandable really, as Gyeong-se is not only deceased at this point, but he probably hasn't had a proper wash in a long time. This is the final straw that broke the camel's back. Mr. Kim sees this reaction and interprets it as Mr. Park gagging on the stench of the underclass. He becomes drunk on rage and and stabs Mr. Park, ending what is a scene of ridiculous intensity where you don't know where the next death is coming from. As some time passes, we see the miraculous recovery of Ki-woo, who now does have some brain damage, which means he laughs in the most inappropriate of times. It's a really disturbing scene in its own right, to be honest, because seeing him giggle about something as serious as the death of his sister is just nasty to the core. The final section of Parasite takes on the form of a monologue from Ki-woo. Time passes, he grows older and begins his journey as a businessman. We discover that Mr. Kim has retreated to the basement to hide from the authorities, communicating this again through Morse code with his son. In a sense, he's taken the place of Kyung-se. Ki-woo then vows to earn enough money to escape the reproduction of being born working class, to buy the Park's former house and finally release his father. So that's my take on Parasite and why it well and truly earns a place in our Nightmare Fuel Hall of Fame. And let me know down in the comments what you thought of the film. Know your privileges, don't look down on anyone, and I'll see you next time for another dose of Nightmare Fuel.